recording. So, greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I am so happy today, very happy, because we are here to welcome a wonderful, wonderful person, a great guest, and she is such a wonderful artist, so talented, a movie buff, so smart, and a collector of many things, cinema related, art related, and otherwise, and also a designer and artist extraordinaire with many examples of her art being displayed on many a cover of many a physical media release that you may indeed know and may indeed own. And so I have a lot of great great hopes for this conversation. I'm looking forward to this very much. And so won't you join me in welcoming our guest all the way from California. This is Drusilla Adeline, and the design artist artwork, Sister Hyde. So Sister Hyde or Drusilla. So Drusilla, Sister Hyde, Drusilla, welcome. It's a real great honor to be able to speak with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. Greetings from California.
How are you doing today,
Greetings
my
from
friend?
Glendale.
How
I'm
are you
doing
doing
very
today?
well, actually.
And
I'm staying awake, I'm staying alert, I'm staying hydrated.
what's your drink of choice right now?
This is a concoction of pure poison created of peach juice and Mountain Dew.
Ooh.
Because I am an American hillbilly from the Midwest, and we are raised on nightmare fuel.
That's fantastic, actually. I'm going to have to give that a try. Maybe I'll do so later today. So peach juice and Mountain Dew, because we have Mountain Dew here in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So is
The
there
peach
a...
juice is just for flavor and the illusion of it being something other than battery acid that I'm drinking.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's worth trying new things, right? So I'll have to give it a try, and we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know afterwards. So, but oh, my dear friend, so thank you so much for this. And uh, uh, I know that you're busy, and so I'm grateful for the time that you've taken and put aside for this conversation today. And I know that you're busy because you are. Let's go to this particular point first, which is you are an artist, designer extraordinaire.
Mhm.
You are. Well, could you tell us just what kind of artwork and what kind of design work you are engaged with at the moment?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you. It's outrageously complimentary. But I do mostly graphic design and film art design with like a couple little splashes of illustration here and there as need be because I don't have the most formal of art backgrounds, but I can get the job done when need be. Um, but it's very, I don't know, Xeroxy, very 70s, very tactile presentation. And I tend to do, as you mentioned, a lot of home media releases. I've done a couple covers with the Criterion Collection, Kino Lorber, 88, Altered Innocence. And then I've also just had my first vinyl release with Waxwork, not Waxwork, with Death Waltz and Mondo. Um, and not to mention key art film posters and the occasional festival poster here and there. Just trying to bring something new, something a little bit different than your average Photoshop fare.
Amazing. That sounds so amazing because this is the sort of thing that I love, which is artwork poster art, cover art,
Mhm.
album covers, vinyl that you just mentioned. And so, and here you are one of the artists that does the stuff that people like myself love to look at and admire and really see. So I'm so thrilled with this. So could you tell us, while we're on the topic, could you tell us a little bit about what are some of those examples of the artwork? And we've spoke about this off camera a little bit. So, but just for our audience, for anyone who might not necessarily know, could you let us know a little bit about what kind of art, what are some of the examples of the artwork that you've designed, say for some of the maybe DVD or Blu-ray releases?
So for the Criterion Collection, I was lucky enough to be introduced to Eric Skillman, their fabulous art director over there, at the end of last year, and we worked on the Scorsese Shorts collection, which came out at the beginning of this year, which was a blast and an honor to work on, and I still pinch myself that's on my shelf now. And then we just recently finished up David Lynch's The Elephant Man, which is one of my favorite movies, and I cannot believe that I got to help usher it into the collection. And we did a kind of new update on the iconic poster image for that, and a couple additional pieces that'll be housed in a lovely new digipack slipcase. With Kino, I did the My Deren collection. My Deren is also one of my favorite filmmakers, and so I'm very honored to help bring her films back from YouTube VHS quality obscurity and filing onto HD, so you can watch Meshes in that land. And then with 88, last year I did the sexploitation film Pets, which is everything it sounds like, and the Jamie Lee Curtis slasher classic Terror Train, which is the epitome of its genre in every way, shape, and form. And there's a couple more things in the works this year with Altered Innocence. There's a couple more home video releases that I'm working on that should be dropping with a couple other labels end of this year, beginning of next year. Fingers crossed. And with Death Waltz, we just wrapped up and announced uh, We Are Still Here, the Barbara Crampton Fulci homage from about 4 or 5 years ago, which is just an absolute throwback blast of a movie. And we did a nice spot polish cover art of like some kind of reflective skulls on it that are looking really good. It's a nice gatefold release, and it's available through Mondo right now. And then there should be another release with Death Waltz coming up in a month or two. Fingers crossed.
I'm just stunned. I'm absolutely stunned. This is incredible, and the way you were describing it as well, I was so happy to hear your descriptions of these, because obviously it's not just the fact that you are creating this great artwork that is capturing the essence of these works in the way that you see it, and that you want to, and that we share that experience with you, but also you seem to have a real great and deep appreciation and knowledge for the particular work or the field of cinema or art or music or whatever the case may be. You seem to have a great appreciation and knowledge for that particular piece that you're working on. So could I just ask a little bit about your process then? Is it, do you have to feel like you need to know a little bit about the work before you can say accept a particular commission or project? What is the process by which you, let's say, maybe take an example? I don't know. You mentioned I love Terror Train. I love that artwork that you did for Terror Train. I thought was very, very clever. and it had a sort of it captured the essence very well, and also Scorsese shorts, it captured the essence beautifully, and Elephant Man as well, which is going to be coming up. It just seems to capture something so marvelous and right. It's iconic. It captures the poster, and yet there are some slight differences if you look carefully, which is so
Mhm.
beautiful. And what you say too is that you love the film. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of being a bit of a fanboy here because
Oh
I'm
no,
just
go right ahead. Yeah,
so
like
because I'm a huge fan. So, and I'm sorry. So could you I'm going to have to stop myself here and just ask you, could you let us in just give us a little bit of your secret as to how you work with a particular project in mind?
well, with every single film, every single project I do, it's somehow film related to one way, shape, or form. And so I always have to start with the movie. Usually, if I'm working with a home video client like the Criterion Collection, I'll be presented with a title and a brief detailing very specifically what they're after in terms of the artwork for the release. Though sometimes that can be pretty broad ask, and sometimes it can be like this is our impression and interpretation of the film. Let's see what you build off of that. So the starting point is always going to be a mixture of three things. It's always going to be me sitting down to watch the movie and what the movie presents itself as, whatever brief the client presents to me, and whatever direction that they're very specifically angling at. And then the third aspect is my interpretation of both, my personal interpretation of the film and my read and the elements and themes that I pick up on as a person from my own experiences, and then the way that I read and interpret the brief and how I combine those things together. So I will typically start either, a lot of the times I've seen the movies. Like I've been fortunate enough to be asked onto projects that I'm already a fan of, like The Elephant Man. I didn't have to think about that. I that was a yes. Scorsese Shorts was a yes. Like I'm not going to say no to Eric ever. Um, Same with Terror Train. Like you don't say no to a Jamie Lee Curtis slasher, especially Terror Train. And so other films, which there's been few, but there's one that I'm working on at the moment that I hadn't seen before. That you sit down, put the movie on, spend a good hour and a half, 2 hours getting into the groove of what that movie is, and I'll usually keep my sketchbook with me while I'm watching the movie on the couch, and just like write down themes, write down like maybe like, oh, hey, that thing happened, and be like, okay, I'm tracking a bit of this. This happens a couple times. A couple mentions to vampires here, a couple mentions to fire explosions here. That could be an image, that could be a theme. And then I usually have like the right page of my sketchbook is just like themes and words and like character names scribbled out. And then after the movie, I'll go back through and I'll like tick down and highlight what seems the most important of those and what is the most like visually stimulating. Um, and then from there, I work through that and the brief and start making sketches of how does this work together? How do these images and themes inform the brief and then work through a visual idea? For instance, on Scorsese Shorts, part of the brief was very specifically, this is not about Scorsese the icon. This is not about Scorsese the man. This is about Scorsese as a young artist, and this is about the work and the themes that he was working through at that point. So how can we present family, New York, these kind of concepts of filmmaking that he was playing with at the time, and these concepts of the form, and kind of pull that through. And so one of the main points in that brief was Scorsese's face shouldn't be on the cover. So I had to go, okay, what says Scorsese without eyebrows and his face? And so one of the first things that I did, even just going through my sketchbook, was like, okay, so like New York City skyline of some kind, something like that. Um, and then a bunch of very crazy ideas with film stock and the tie from one of the films, and then trying to incorporate the razor blade from The Big Shave, and trying to like, I had some kind of collage ideas in mind and setups, and then also some more like simple, clean, iconic ones. And I did end up using Scorsese's face on one of them, even though I, probably shouldn't have. But it ended up looking good and ended up making it to the final round. So uh, it kind of worked. But we were blessed on that one because part of the material that was provided with the films were photographs taken by Martin Scorsese while he was at NYU. And one of them was uh, a couple city skyline shots. And so we were able to work with them and adapt them and make something really, really nice and unique out of Martin's own photography. Um, so it's rooted really in his own work a couple times over. And then the big aspect of that one is how can we sell 1970s, 1960s New York from a typographical angle. And Scorsese is very, very associated with the Herb Lubalin designed font Avant-Garde. If you think about After Hours, if you think about Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, those title treatments and those opening credits, and even King of Comedy, the opening credits, is in Avant-Garde. And so I was like, okay, that's a very 70s font. That's a very New York font. The nice like hard edges to the A's and the W's. Knew that was going to have to be in there, but it was going to work better for the titles of the films because it has more of the letters and characters that really accentuate that typeface. And so when it came down to the Scorsese shorts, the primary title, I think Eric's note for that was just chunky 70s font. And so I poured through all the fonts that I have, and then also all of the kind of poster resources that I have going through 70s US and Italian and French posters, and trying to see like what font choices kind of spoke to this at the time. And we ended up on Futura Display, which is a favorite font of mine. It's gorgeous, it's thick, it's round, it's very unique, and like says a lot. And it was used on a lot of Italian giallo posters in the 1970s. I'm specifically thinking of The Killer Reserved 9 Seats. And it's beautiful and it's sleek, and it's primarily used in all caps as a very like signage piece. If you think about the Netflix interactive movie Bandersnatch, they use Futura Display as the titling there in all caps, but both trying to make this pop as something unique, different, and more in the style of the 1970s, as well as discussing Scorsese as a young man, as an artist on the rise and not as an icon yet. I focused on it being exclusively lowercase, capitalizing nothing of the title, and then kind of blending the title together to be one single object. Here, pull off the shelf so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the final product, and then work through. If you can like zoom in really close and tight, there's also a good amount of half toning going on in there, which we carried through to the spine. So the whole package has a very 1970s print look to it because of that, which is very subtle and very unnecessary if need be, but it continues the theme throughout it, and is able to pull that off. And so that's, a very condensed version of pulling the process through start to finish and pulling a theme and pulling a single idea through a piece. It's not always that successful. It's not always that fun. It's not always that, research laden. Sometimes it's, you see a film, you've got some ideas, you've got some photos, assets, screenshots, and you toss them into Photoshop and you start having fun and start seeing what works and what doesn't. And usually when I'm working on something, I'll always do what I like to call a sandbox comp, whereas I'll basically just let myself play in the sandbox in Photoshop, not even go in with a concept, not even go in with structure or something to like work with, but just be like, okay, I like this. Let's see what they can do. And they don't always come out with something. But the piece that I mentioned on Scorsese Shorts that had his silhouette on it was one of those, and it ended up being one of the like favorite contenders. And the reason the New York City skyline shot was the final cover is because that's the one that Martin Scorsese picked. So
So,
that's his selection. That's what we use, and
oh,
he's not wrong.
wow. Well, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to show, I'm gonna go to your website, Sister Hyde website here, and here we go. Can you see this? We're at your website now. Can you see the
Yes.
website? Okay, so I'm gonna click here. So that's the design that appears on your website there, and that's the font that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking here about, well, this is the cover specifically, but so this is a photograph. This cover is based off of a photograph. Is that correct? Or a
Mm-hmm.
number of photographs? Is that right?
It's based off a single photograph taken by Martin Scorsese that was done with this time lapse effect to it, which is striking. The moment that we opened up the um, assets that they had been delivered by Scorsese's team, this was one of the first images that I landed on, and my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, "This looks amazing." The the like scaling is perfect for our needs. And then I was like looking through them as I was reading an email from Eric, the art director, and like at the very end of it, there's like, oh, by the way, there's also some good city skyline shots in there that might work. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what you mean. I have
because
found it.
because this was amazing when I first saw the artwork announced, however many months it was before the actual release, because you know how they have the announcement and you can go on the
Mm-hmm.
Criterion website. And I saw this artwork, but then when I actually received the disc, I was able therefore to notice that it was like I please forgive me for my poor description of it because I'm not a professional artist, but it was like uh was it composite, or it
Yeah,
was maybe
overlay kind
overlapping,
of
yeah,
effect. Yeah.
overlay, thank you. That was so you were dealing with an overlay effect of, let's say, two or more portions of a particular photograph, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just it's as striking by itself as basically the work with this was how do we make this fit here and also just kind of not get in the way of the image.
Yeah, that is a really interesting way of describing it. So how can it fit, but at the same time not get in the way of the image? So let the image speak for itself on the one hand, but also try to present it in a way that is in keeping with the particular essence of this approach. That is fascinating. That is
Thank you.
absolutely fascinating.
It
And
was it
yeah.
was buckets of fun, buckets and buckets.
Oh, and while we're there, and we're talking about the Criterion Collection, let me just go back to your website, which is really wonderful, by the way. And I'll put a,
Thank
do you
you.
mind if I put a link to the
Oh yeah, go
website
right
here?
ahead.
Because I think, oops, there we go. Oops. I'm back here, Sister High Design. And let's see, here we go. And I'm at the website. So can I click on the Elephant Man here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So here is the artwork for the Elephant Man. And this is, could you let us in a little bit into your thinking and approach to this particular artwork design? Because I think it's absolutely
Yeah,
fascinating.
thank you. When we, I mean, it was like a couple, like it was near the beginning of quarantine, and I got an email being like, "Do you want to do the Elephant Man?" And I was just, "Yes, yes, you don't say no to that." Um, and Eric had come to me with a couple different ideas of how can we approach the Elephant Man, which is such an iconic, very famous movie. Not even like from a cinephile David Lynch perspective, but also like it's one of the most well-regarded movies of the '80s, one of the most well-regarded American films ever made. It was a giant Oscar contender. It's a big deal of a film, and I have my own personal history with it being such a fan of it that I mean, there was a week in high school where I'd rented the DVD or the tape from the library, and I watched it every single day. That because I had it out for a week, and I wanted to watch it as much as possible. So I would come home from school, put in the Elephant Man, I'd watch it front to back, then I would do my homework, and then I would go to school the next day. I would come home, and I'd watch the Elephant Man every single day for a week, just because that's as long as I had it. It was very hard to find, very hard to watch for a while. Um, and so you don't say no to Eric, and you don't say no to David, and I couldn't. And so we were looking at how can we approach this from a new angle? How can we find a way in to such an amazing property? And David's primary note up front that he presented to Eric and Susan Argotzi, the producer, was that he didn't want to show Joseph Merrick without the mask on. He wanted to keep that as much as possible a surprise for within the film exclusively. Nowhere within the packaging, menus, booklet, anywhere did he want to see Hurt outside of the mask, which I respect. I deeply respect and agree with that choice. And so it was all about a couple ideas were presented, a couple angles were given on how to kind of find a new look for this movie. But also being a Criterion fan and collector that I have been for years, and a fan of David Lynch's work, I also have the Criterion release of Eraserhead and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me and Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet, and I also know that David's posters are so iconic to begin with that a lot of the time the eventual releases tend to either echo or update that in one way or another. So while I was working on these new approaches, which were a mixture of, some were very like period piece specific, could have been almost Merchant Ivory-esque, while others were a bit more collage and abrasive and chaotic, punk almost. I also set to work on my own time on finding a way of readapting the poster in a way, because that's an incredibly iconic image. I had the Laserdisc of the Elephant Man gifted to me when I was in college, and I had it framed in my apartment for year or two, and it just like I looked at that all the time. It's such an amazing distilled image, and I was like, okay, how can we do that? That shot of him at the docks with that great early Lynchian fog enveloping him. How can we do that in a way that's new and that's fresh, and that's also something that fits into my style and my aesthetic that I'm capable of doing? Because the original was done by hand, it's hatchwork illustration, and it's very specific to the period that the film is set, and it's gorgeous. But at the same time, and we had access to that original poster and to that original illustration, it just wasn't feeling accurate and feeling appropriate with the Criterion branding and a new title treatment, and it just kind of wasn't feeling modern enough. And I know it's been used similarly by Studio Canal on the European releases of the film recently, and Eric and I also were very hell-bent on distinguishing this release from those. And so having a new artwork in any way, shape, or form is absolutely the first way of doing that. And then the release itself speaks for itself beyond that. But so I set to work combing through all the images from the film that I had and all the images from the film that I could gather from my copy of the movie itself of that dock scene. And then I basically started working with kind of collage approaches to it, of like doing like a cut up presentation of Joseph Merrick there, and then like adding smoke around him and all these different things. And they kind of worked, kind of didn't, and I kind of just like left on the back burner. And when I was presenting the other stuff, I was like, by the way, I'm thinking about doing this. This could be an idea of like doing, kind of redoing the one sheet. I don't know yet, like maybe. And Eric was like, okay, like, you know, give it a shot. We'll see what it looks like. And so I eventually landed on a kind of more pointillist approach. So rather than doing the like kind of hatchwork period stuff, more of like, you know, specific dotting, but not a very fine art approach to this, more of a, again, my roots are in very Xeroxy punk aesthetics. And so I was trying to see how could I bring that, because we were also looking at very kind of collagey cut up approaches from that perspective. So it was like, how can I bring that in to a more fine art world? And so I used some more splattery, chaotic brushes to render this concept of him at the dock and try and recreate the image that way, because I felt like the hatch, again, is gorgeous, but it doesn't fully capture the tactile nature of the fog and the atmosphere in those early Lynch films, especially Eraserhead, especially Elephant Man. Just the way that world looks and feels and sounds is gritty, and it's grimy, and it's thick, and you have to move through the air like soup. And so I really wanted to find something that felt like that. And so the brushes that I used, all digital, and this is all in Photoshop, are basically what you would use if you were replicating a can of spray paint or like blood splatter. And I kept the original one sheet up on my phone, just kind of next to my computer, and then the images from the doc next to that, and, you know, built Merrick out in the center. And then I just added all the smoke and chaos around him just over the course of like 2 or 3 days, just in very tiny, small, specific amounts. And then I did a watercolor wash on top of that in subtle like gray tones, just to give it some depth and to like make him pop out, so that the background can be just a little bit darker. And that was cropped in a little bit initially. It was a lot tighter than where we ended up, because I wanted it to look a little bit different than where, like I said, most releases of this film and most depictions of that iconic poster tend to look, and, you know, a plethora of typography options. And so those were presented along with the slew of new concepts to the team at the Criterion Collection, and that was then presented down the line to David Lynch. And David came back and said basically that, you know, the poster's iconic. Why use anything other than the poster? So he just wanted to see a version of the poster, and then the kind of like retooling of the poster that I was doing. And then he very, very, very specifically wanted to see the title treatment from the opening credits of the film, because it's based off of an carving, I believe, on the side of a museum in London. And so there was a photograph sent across of that, and we spent a good like day or two looking at that and poring over it, trying to determine what font that was, what font that could be, because it almost looks like Windsor, and it almost looks like a couple other fonts, because each letter is unique in a way that they could belong to different font families, but together they make sense. And so what we ended up doing was taking that and taking a high-res 4K screenshot of the opening title from the credits, and I was able to create a vector of that very specific logo off of that, and then I enhanced the kind of dots around it so that were a bit more pronounced, so they didn't fall off into the now dot-heavy cover. And then I did 3 different presentations of the new version of the one sheet, basically one that was, like I said, cropped in very, very tight, and then one that was the exact same cropping as the original one sheet, and then the one that we ended up with is cropped even further out. So it's wider out than any other version of that. It's wider out than the original painting by like a quarter of an inch, like barely any, but it's wider out than anything else, so it can fit over the full digipack and the DVD release comfortably. And then it was all about, incorporating the original title treatment on there in a way that reads, incorporating the Criterion branding on a way that works and is complementary to the artwork, and then also the legal requirements of David's name, Sir Anthony Hopkins' name, and John Hurt's name. And the great benefit of choosing the new interpretation of the one sheet allowed me to do additional portraits of Sir Anthony Hopkins and Freddie Jones in that same style for the interior of the digipack. So once you slide the case away from John Merrick, you get Dr. Treves, and then on the back you get Freddie Jones as the Carnival Barker character. I'm sure he has a name. I'm forgetting it at the moment. And then the interior of the packaging, and the rest was kind of continuations of that smoke. I was able to do, just like a whole, basically one big painting of just smoke that I was able to use to keep the back and the full like package of the case nice and consistent, and the interior behind the disc. So it was, again, it's all about finding a way into a film and one or two good ideas that can be pulled through and kept consistent. And the great thing about working with the Criterion Collection is it's not just a cover. It's not one piece. The whole package itself is the artwork, and is the presentation, and is the full expression of this movie. From cover to the last page of the booklet to some of the DVD menus. And it's truly a blast to work on.
Wow. That's thank you so much for sharing this with me. And I'm very I'm oh no, are you okay? Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Have some more of the Mountain Dew and peach juice. Yes. And so the what was it? Yes. So I'm really very impressed with this approach, and you were able to work, for instance, on The Elephant Man for the Criterion Collection, and as you mentioned, the film was very important to you. It was one of your, and David Lynch works are very important to you as well. And then here you are able to work on one of your favorite David Lynch films and receiving notes, right, and briefs, as you say. And I'm
Hmm.
assuming that the everything needed David Lynch's final approval. Was that right?
Yes, David is very involved in his releases, which is again like a blessing. Um, and I believe Mel Brooks was also involved in some way, shape, or form. Again, I work with Eric, and I hear what comes down the grapevine. So,
Yeah.
um, but I know Mel was involved in the release to an extent, and that's also a huge honor. I'm a gigantic Mel Brooks fan. I'm a gigantic David Lynch fan. I'm a huge Scorsese fan. So not only being able to do anything for the Criterion Collection, again, if they were like, we've got a movie that you've never heard of, that you're not even gonna like, and no one's gonna see it or buy it. Do you want to do the cover? I'm gonna say yes. If it's a movie I loathe with my soul, I'm gonna say yes. They could, especially like Eric is the best. He's one of the nicest people in the world, one of the most fun people to work with and work for. And of course, not only the like freedom and fun of working with them, but also the prestige. Like it's no small feat that a film is being released by the Criterion Collection. It's all, you know what you're getting when you see that C on a release. You know what a big deal it is. You know what's going to be on that disc. You know that you're going to be pleased with what's there. And so going into being a part of the team that's creating such an object is daunting. Knowing that you're expected to make something of that caliber is daunting. And so I'm honored to even be presumed able to do that, invited to do that, and then see people pick these releases up and be enjoying them, um, because I buy them, I collect them, I've loved and followed them for a long time, and so I'm just doing what I would like to see. At the end of it, it's selfish, but like for instance, on Scorsese shorts, I'll grab the copy of it. One of the films, Italian American, features Martin Scorsese's mother cooking her pasta sauce for the family. And at the end of the movie, the recipe comes up. And a part of the booklet, Scorsese's team provided us with a mountain of ephemera that he had of scanned in documents and elements to be included in the booklet, which, again, spoiled spoiled for wealth there. And one of those was the original Xerox of his mom's pasta recipe for her sauce. And so it was like, well, this is going in there, obviously. And so a mixture of we only have so much room in a booklet, and as a Criterion fan and as someone who didn't have the most money growing up as a film fan, I would get most of my Criterion releases from the library, get them out for a week, watch them, give them back. But most libraries take the booklets out. They throw them away, they do something, or maybe they're stolen by other guests. However, I've never gotten one from a library that's had a booklet in it. So, knowing that, I very specifically didn't put the recipe in the booklet anywhere, but I very specifically stuck it underneath the booklet in the packaging, because I knew even if you get this from the library, you should be able to make Martin Scorsese's mother's pasta recipe. That's important to me. A good sauce is important.
Uh, I'm wow. That is you've revealed a secret. My goodness, this is a little I had never, didn't realize. And I want to say also, thank you so much for reminding me that I suppose it depends on the process and depends on the title and the artist for a
Mm-hmm.
given product or particular title, right? But for you in your instances, say with working, say with the Criterion Collection, yes, it wasn't just the Sister Hyde design on the cover, but it was also everything that was encompassing that, the artwork that was encompassing the entire release, the front, the back, the wraparound, the outer shell, the
Mm-hmm.
inner shell where there might have been a digipack, and then the booklet from cover to cover. So as you indicate, and
Mm-hmm.
also not just that, but the inner, what's the phrase? But they're not reversible sleeves, but the inner part of the sleeve, as you
Yeah, the
indicated.
interior. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So the
Yeah.
interior. So that side, and uh, film is about to start and all this. So
Mm-hmm.
this is all you're a part of this the going into and designing the entire experience, as it were, the tangible
Yeah, it's
experience of this. Yes.
it's very important to me. I mean, I cannot tell you how many movies I've bought just because they had good cover art or just because they had neat packaging. Especially between Criterion and Arrow, I've bought so many titles just because, wow, that's a great cover. I wonder what the movie's like. Or like, hey, that's a crazy release of the game that Arrow just put out with a gigantic booklet designed by my friend Scott Soslow. That's cool. Let's get that. Like let's see what that's all about. And it's fabulous. I mean, like when you find out that there's hidden schematics for a baby cart in the Criterion box set of Lone Wolf and Cub. It doesn't matter if you've seen those movies or not. You want to go buy a Lone Wolf and Cub.
Sorry. Yes, you're. That is so great, and I am assuming, therefore, that there are many little secrets and little little. I mean, you've taught us a little secret here with Scorsese shorts, so I'm very thrilled. And before I move on, I do want to mention I was so taken just now with your description of David Lynch's works, and especially
Mm.
the early David Lynch works, when you were discussing your approach to the cover design. Let's talking about the cover design, the re what's the phrase? You were taking the iconic poster art by the
Mm-hmm.
Doc and John Merrick, and you were essentially reinterpreting this, and you described um, the use of the dots or the points in a way
Mm-hmm.
to evoke the sense of the fog, which I thought was so was such a brilliant way of approaching it, because it was like that is exactly the type of thing that it was focusing in on the fog, right? It was making
Mm-hmm.
a point kind of telling us that the fog itself was almost like its own character. So you're treating it that way, and then you look closely, and it makes you want to look closely, and you realize there's a lot going on there. And
Mm.
then there are little slight differences, like the way that the little background is a little bit, and just so many wonderful details. The more you look at it, the more you realize how distinct it is. And when you mentioned early David Lynch, it reminded me also of Eraserhead. And you mentioned Eraserhead,
Mm-hmm.
how that film was able to capture, you know, the way that the dust, right, the dust is blown into the air,
Mm-hmm.
and then we see, right, the very right one of the most iconic shots of the film, and the way that the dust is lit, each little,
Yeah.
it felt like that
He's
was,
backlit and you can see everything
yeah.
falling there. And I very specifically was thinking about that shot while I was designing this because I was like, every piece of art for The Elephant Man always sells this as an Oscar-winning period film. Especially if you look at the more recent Paramount DVD release that they did here in the States, it's colorized, it's Anthony Hopkins up to the front. And especially again, even the hatchwork is very like throwback to thinking of this as being a period film first. And which, it was at the time because David Lynch wasn't well known when The Elephant Man came out to cult film fanatics who saw Eraserhead at the New Art in Santa Monica at midnight. They knew who he was. But when Eraserhead was nominated at the Oscars, as when Elephant Man was nominated at the Oscars and Lynch was nominated for it, everyone thought he was British because they'd never heard of him before. And it's a predominantly English movie. Um, so I wanted to kind of pull in that style and that approach, which is in the movie, um, and kind of like echo it over to Eraserhead a little bit so that it still reads and feels like a David Lynch film. Because it is. It is, in every essence of its being, an incredibly Lynchian film. Even if people like to dismiss it, along with the straight story as being the more tame and the more approachable Lynch films, that does not in any way, shape, or form take it from being any less Lynchian. It is still like up there with Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive for being like as Lynchian as possible. Just because it's a true story, just because it's based on a book, does not mean it is any less his own and any less a movie that you will be experiencing a David Lynch experience while watching that film, whether in the cinemas or at your home, or I know he would rather you not watch it on your iPhone, but nonetheless.
So this is well said, my friend. Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. This is just amazing to me. I have to ask you. Also, you are obviously a huge film fan, enthusiast. You are also a collector, as you say. You have a number of releases. You're also an artist. So you're looking at this. I can't even begin to imagine the what must be going on in terms of the sort of the way that the synapses and everything are just firing off at you when you look at something, and you must it all these things, these images, and my goodness, the way that you approach cinema and art. Oh my goodness! I wish I could know how that feels from your perspective, because just talking with you like this is really really something else indeed. I'm really impressed. I must ask you, what were some of those films then for you growing up,
Mhm.
that you really were the landmark film watches for you? You had mentioned, of course, watching The Elephant Man in between sessions of homework, but what were some of those other films for you growing up that you would say that were the ones that led you to be the film fan, enthusiast, artist that you are today? What are some of those examples?
I'm very fortunate in that I grew up with two things. I had um, access to a very well-appointed public library, and I had a very film literate mother who was not a fan of Disney. Specifically because, in her own words, Disney kills off moms. I don't want you watching that. So, and plus, she's an adult. She's doing stuff. She doesn't want to watch, she likes animated stuff, and she has her own nostalgic view of the Muppets or Winnie the Pooh and stuff like that to show her children. But she didn't want to watch, whatever Lion King for the millionth time or something like that. So she would take us to the library, especially during the summer when my brother and I were little hellions and had nothing to do. And she would choose stuff for us. So she would be like, all right, cool. You're going to watch Young Frankenstein today. And we're like, okay. You're going to watch Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. Uh, we're going to watch It's a Mad, 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 Mad World today. Or The Princess Bride, or Breakfast Club, or Caddyshack, or Vacation, the Blues Brothers. And so from a young age, and I'm talking about like elementary school, like first grade, I was watching like movies I shouldn't have been, especially Animal House, especially Caddyshack, especially like the John Landis movies. Um, but then I was like really, really, really taken by Mel Brooks at a young age, and also Alfred Hitchcock at a very young age. My mom is a big Hitchcock fan, and she one day when I was homesick from school made me watch Rear Window with her at like 6 or 7. And my uncle showed me Psycho and the Birds on the same night, like probably the same year or a year or two later. So High Anxiety was one of my favorite movies, like at age 10, probably. And so I just like, this was normal to me. I remember having friends over to my house, you know, probably in like elementary school or middle school, and being like, okay, cool, I'm gonna put on Blazing Saddles. And I didn't get why they didn't like it. I didn't get why they wanted me to turn Blazing Saddles off. Um, and so that was always, important to me. And, especially watching all the Abbott and Costello movies as a kid, that just seemed like that's what movies were. Like that's what was out there and around. I didn't think of 1942 as being an old movie. It's like, yeah, it's just in black and white. It's fun. And so when I was in probably middle school, I got a book from my school library of the New York Times 1000 Greatest Movies Ever Made. It's like published in like 1998 or something like that. And I would just go through it. I would see like titles in the index that I had heard of, like Clockwork Orange, Pulp Fiction, these movies that I'd heard references to and were in the like lexicon, like Train Spotting, but I didn't know what they were. And so I would like go to it in the book. I would read the original New York Times review for Casablanca or for Citizen Kane or for all of these movies. And then I would, whatever struck my interest between that review and being in the book, I would go to my library and then I would pick, After Hours off the shelf. And I would go and I would like burn through Quentin Tarantino. I would burn through Wes Anderson. And then I would burn through Kevin Smith. And then I would burn through Martin Scorsese. And then at a certain point, I was like, why am I not watching foreign films? I was like, Inglourious Bastards had come out when I was in high school. And I was like, that's 2.5 hours and maybe 20 minutes are in English. Why? Like, of course I could watch it for. Like, that's not even a thing. In America, they're not very well regarded. It's not really taught that you should be watching a French film or a Japanese film or a Russian film at all. And so I went to my library and I saw whatever had the sticker that had the little globe on it that indicated there was a foreign film. And then I looked to see what had the Criterion logo on it because I was already a little fiend at that point. And I knew that equals good. And I just grabbed the first couple that looked good to me. And they just so happened to be The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, The Phantom of Liberty, and Georges Franju's Eyes Without a Face. And it was all based on the artwork. The aesthetic apparatus cover for Eyes Without a Face and the two Rene Ferracci covers for Phantom and Discreet. And those three movies changed my life, especially the two Bunuel. I'm a gigantic Bunuel fan. He, Pedro Almodovar, and Rainer Werner Fassbinder are my favorite filmmakers. And I fell down a rabbit hole from the first 10 minutes of Discreet Charm. Bunuel has the most acerbic, chaotic, occasionally mean-spirited, but always whip-smart and just best sensibility ever, while incredibly surreal and magical and punk rock without being like aesthetically loud or surprising in any way, shape, or form. He presents his movies like straightforward chamber dramas or melodramas because he has the background of doing, decades of very pulpy melodramas in Mexico, which are fabulous and highly underrated. And then he brought that back to France and Spain in the 50s through the 70s and then just went buck wild. He used the form and then screwed around as much as he could to make his statement. And he did. If you look at Simon of the Desert, that is a 45-minute long movie that has more ideas in it than most 3-hour-long epics by other more famous auteurs. I'm not going to name them. So those were a really, really, really big deal for me. I fell in love with David Cronenberg in high school. I named my band after the movie Dead Ringers, which is stupid. Um, and I really, really, really started to fall in love with horror, which was something that I had been very afraid of for years as a kid, but I started to kind of tiptoe into the genre and tiptoe into the territory. Again, mostly through uh, what was being presented to me by Brian De Palma and David Cronenberg and Dario Argento. And so I had this view of horror as like high art, of this operatic thing, this like insanely thought out, meticulous, beautiful product that's going to hit you on a gut level and is going to go for your emotions and then go for your subconscious after. And I fell in love with these from like my own knee jerk response to like Friday the 13th and slasher movies as a kid. I hated them, couldn't watch them, terrified of them. And but I could watch a woman licking her weird infant in the brood. And I could watch a man's head exploding, or I could get behind a woman falling in razor wire in Suspiria. I could get all the crazy shit in Tenebrae. Um, and when I was in college in Chicago, there is a annual tradition in the month of October called the 24-Hour Massacre, which is hosted at the Portage Theater, which is an old movie house just outside of Chicago that has no heat and no air conditioning. And they lock you in there from noon on a Saturday to noon on a Sunday for like $25. And they run horror movies the entire time. And they'll tell you maybe like 4 or 5 of them to get you in the door. They'll be like, we've got Day of the Dead, and we've got Black Christmas, and we've got Eaten Alive, and we've got, Haunted Palace. Come on in. And you go and you sit there, and they always start with a silent film with a live orchestra score. Everything is on 35 if they can get it. If not, it's DCP. And the first time I went to that, it broke my brain. I had never seen most of the movies before, and we watched Twins of Evil, and there was so perfectly selected of if there is one film from every subgenre of horror, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see a silent film, you're gonna see a Hammer film, you're gonna see a Vincent Price, Roger Corman film, you're gonna see a Giallo film, you're gonna see a Southern Fried Slasher, you're gonna see a Romero zombie film, you're gonna see a modern slasher. We're gonna show Trick or Treat. We're gonna see a proto slasher. We're gonna watch Black Christmas. And it was like the most thorough horror history class I've ever taken. And it was one day, and I was freezing because this theater had no heat, and I was subsiding off of energy drinks and like pizza slices. And the first time I went, I went with friends, and we assumed, always a problem, that would be encouraged to go in costume because there's horrors around Halloween. No one else went in costume. A friend of mine went as Paul Williams from Phantom of the Paradise, and I went as Jack Nance from Eraserhead. So I was in a like very tight suit with my hair done up for 24 hours, freezing my ass off, watching horror movies, and having the time of my life. And I walked out that theater a different person.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is amazing. Um, uh, Jack, oh my goodness. Wow, wow. So I, I'm sorry. I was getting such a kick out of that, and then the last about the costumes I thought was just icing on the cake. Really lovely, absolutely,
It's a poor
absolutely
choice.
lovely. Well, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so, my goodness, this is truly, truly impressive. Um, I I was just sitting here and listening to you. Well, first of all, before I forget, I must say that your description of Bunuel was brilliant, and you used the phrase which I never thought about until you had mentioned it, and I was just I could now I can't stop thinking because it was so brilliant. Which was one of your descriptions was punk rock. Wow, this is blowing my mind. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, and oh my goodness, this is really exciting to me. You have shown me a new way of looking at this, and I this is amazing to me. So Bunuel, and then you talked about Cronenberg, and then that leading you into this experience with theater, with the movie theater experience, and wow, I'm really stunned. And was this going along as you were growing up and watching films? What were you also how what was it? What was your journey like as an artist leading you to the place that you are now, which is in essence uh a great place of mixing the two, which is your love of
Hmm.
art and your work as an artist, and then your love of film and cinema and the art. So, as you were discovering these films, what was your journey as an artist? How was that progressing to the point that you find yourself where you are now?
Well, that there wasn't even an artistic journey at all until I guess when I was in high school, but it wasn't even intentional. I didn't even think about it in that way. Because I probably from the age of 8 on, I wanted to be in bands. I wanted to be a bass player. I wanted to be, Mike Dirnt and Joan Jett, and I wanted to be Brody Dale and Billy Joe Armstrong. I had this view of myself, and this was going to be it, and I wanted to be this. And then at a certain point in high school, I was in bands and I was playing around and I was recording stuff and I was playing shows throughout the Midwest, and I was like, but I want to make movies now. Now I want to make movies. Um, and so I was lucky enough to start taking film classes in high school. While again, like filling my brain with everything I could get from my library that had a Criterion logo on it. So I watched Bergman movies this week while like going to play like a punk show in Southern Indiana, and then like showing my bandmates I'm Curious Yellow and the Night Porter. um, and like trying to convince them to watch The Seventh Seal. Mistakes. Um, or like, writing songs about Costa Gavras movies. Costa Gavras was a big deal for me in high school. That movie radicalized me. Anyway, um, so I was just like, okay, these are the things. I'm gonna play music and I'm gonna make movies, and that's what's gonna go on. But both of those things needed artwork. You needed flyers to show that you had a show. You needed to make a Facebook page for the band or for the show and the event so you could send it out. You're cutting an EP, it needs artwork. You're cutting an album, it needs artwork. The single needs an artwork. So I just messed around on my computer in my free time, and I made flyers for friends' bands. I made flyers for our bands. I made album covers for us. And when I was in film classes, I made posters for my movies because movies had posters, of course. Like why wouldn't I do that? And I designed my opening title sequences. And even in college, like no one cared about the movies I made. No one like complimented the movie I made, but they would come up to me after class and be like, "The opening credits were awesome." And I was like, "Okay, sure." and they would want me to, do the type and do the opening credits for their movie. And I was like, okay, I like font, but like, that's not a thing. And so all of this was going on while I was, not, I was using these tools and not even thinking of them as tools, just as like a means to an end. But at the same time, like I said, I was devouring movies and collecting movies and becoming such a deep cinephile and like falling in love with artwork and cover art for all of these movies and for posters and stuff. And I started getting like a list of my favorite artists, just, every month that there was a new like batch of Criterion titles. If there was an artist listed for a cover that I just adored, I would go find their site and I would go look through all their stuff. So like, Sam Smith became a big, big influence. Aesthetic Apparatus became a big, big influence. And like, I'm now honored to be able to work with, Eric Skillman at Criterion, but he was the biggest at first. Like, I remember when Broadcast News came out and I looked at that cover and I was like, good God, that's insane. And then I read his blog post going into the process behind that. And that basically taught me graphic design. I didn't go to school for that. I didn't like, I was in like between high school and college probably at that point, and I was just like looking at that and I was like, oh, that's smart. Huh. Wonder if I could do stuff like that. And so it just made me think about movies and it made me think about images in ways that I wasn't thinking about at the time. And following these process posts by Ephron Miller and by Fred Davis and Sam, and then listening to Sam's podcast with Brendan Schaefer, the Poster Boys, and getting into Brendan's work, and then getting into like Akiko Sternberger's work, and finding all these artists and being able to like see their process, being able to see their thought process, being able to see all their comps and see the work that they did, really lit a fire under my ass that, okay, I could do this one day. Maybe not now because I'm doing all this other stuff, but maybe like I could tinker around with this. I could, do this for fun because it's fun. Like, I'm in high school, I'm letting off steam, I'm, getting images off Google, I'm tossing them into Photoshop or PicMonkey or whatever I had at the time, and I'm making images for movies that I love. And hey, I made that. It was quick, it's dumb, it's not the best thing in the world, but I made it. And so by the time I was on my way out of college, I'd moved to LA, and I, temped and I interned at places and I worked at studios and stuff like that. And, it wasn't the same as being in the Midwest and grabbing your friends and going to make a movie on the weekend, or going and grabbing your bandmates and going to cut an album over at your friend's basement. It was the DIY, just do it because you can-ness was gone being in LA. And I was really, really, really grasping for that immediate release, that immediate creative output. And I was brought on to a streaming startup as an editor. And I was like, okay, it's gonna be another job, fine. But it was such a new company that they didn't have a graphic designer. And so while I was editing stuff, I would just be like, oh, this needs a poster so it can go up for streaming. Let me just like really quickly put one together. And then, one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden I'm the in-house designer and I'm not even editing anymore. And then I was there for 3 years doing that. And that, went from being a hobby I didn't even think that much about to being my job. And so while I was there, after a year or so, my friend Scott Saslow, who's a designer who works with Arrow Video and just a number of amazing one-sheets, did a series of posters every single day for a year for the year of 2016, which, like, impressive as hell. I think his first one was for the John Landis movie Spies Like Us, and it's just two lines of text. It says doctor, doctor, and on the other side it says doctor, 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 and then just lines connecting all of them. It's the funniest thing in the world. It's whip smart. There's nothing on it but type and lines. And it's amazing. It's brilliant. It was the first one he did too. And so I followed him and I caught up with all of this stuff and started becoming friends with Scott. And so I was like, you know what? I could do that too. That takes, however long to make a quick piece of fan art. I can make a couple, post them every day, and, do that on the side, just really quick and fun. Just to like give me a release from work. Because work has work content. It's work. It's, you've got notes, you've got deadlines, you've got meetings. It sucks the fun out of it. So I was trying to find my way back into enjoying this, and maybe also finding a voice for myself, because I was doing brand work, and then I had done like crappy Photoshop attempts in high school. So I was trying to find what felt like me. And so I did that. For 2018, I did a poster every single day, that went up on my Instagram account, and they're now archived on my site alphabetically, because if you just do them by when I put them up, there's a very, very stark difference in quality. And so within a couple months of that, I started getting commissions just on my Instagram account for, short films, friends films, and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. I got to do this more now. Awesome. And year ended, and I had enough like full-time commissions that I was able to leave my job in early 2019, and was able to kind of launch Sister Hyde as the design label around that time, and kind of develop a bit of an identity. It took me a year of doing stuff, and I honestly think of that year as like a prelude, because it's all rough, it's all ideas, it's all me exploring different things that, some of it I don't even do stuff that looks like that anymore. I can, obviously, and people can come to me and they point to that and they want me to do that, and I can do that for them. But it's not really what I do that much. It's not what I find to be my voice and my style. It wasn't really until the beginning of 2019 when I started bringing in more illustration, when I started bringing in more of that grungy punk look. And the two posters that I did that kind of landed that were William Friedkin's Cruising and Jonathan Demme's Rachel Getting Married. I did those around the same time, beginning of 2019, just for myself, just, as exercise, coming off a year-long project of doing one every single day, being like, okay, what if I put thought into these now? What if I spent more than an hour on a poster? And those have kind of been the touchstones for me going forward. And I don't have a formal fine art background. I haven't taken an art class since probably middle school or elementary school. I went to college for filmmaking. I studied experimental production. We watched, Kenneth Anger and Maya Deren movies all day, and they made weird films with CRT TVs and surveillance cameras. There's little work to be found with such a degree. And so I taught myself design and Photoshop on my own, using the process and blogs of, the Criterion designers that I loved. And so, end of last year, when I was approached to do the Scorsese set, I lost my mind. I didn't think that was ever something that would happen, let alone something that would happen that soon, let alone, a title like that. And I thought it was a joke for a minute. I nearly had a heart attack. It was one of the most surreal moments of my life. To, be influenced by a group of people for so long in so many facets of my life. Not only like the design aspect of it, because I wouldn't be a designer without any of those people. But also the movies in that collection have informed my life for the past 15 whatever years that I've been digging through them. I don't know who I'd be if I hadn't watched Z in high school, or Walker, or Repo Man. I don't know, had I not had access to and been able to fall in love with Bunuel, if I have a different perspective on the world, probably would. Art does that to people. So to be able to be invited in to help continue that work is insane. It's like, it's like asked to play on stage with the Ramones. I like, you sure you want me? uh, it's humbling as hell.
Yeah. That is really what a moving story, because it's I mean, you say that you didn't have, say, a formal education in art or graphic design necessarily, but it sounds like, obviously, it sounds like you took a lot of what you were learning, maybe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you took what you were learning, maybe at least in part, from your filmmaking, and also your music. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like you, because a lot of that with filmmaking and with music, and again, I'm talking from a non-artist perspective, but the way I think of it is, you have to try to capture the essence of something, right? You have to try to capture, like, if you're writing a song, you have to try to capture the essence of something that you want to express in that song,
Mm-hmm.
however long that is, right? And usually it's not a long time. Sometimes, well, it can be depending on the work or the artist, but you know what I mean. It's usually a finite period of time. And the same thing with a film. You have to be able to express something with a shot or a scene or a particular montage or whatever it is that makes up that particular work in the end. And then with this seems like it's all connected in that way. And then it was just then taking taking the further inspiration, shall we say, from these other artists, and then it just seemed to really grow and blossom from there. This is utterly fascinating to me, my friend.
It's it's weird for me, and I'm living it. Because again, a year ago, right now, I was still the design brand was still new. I was working with I had Pets and Terror Train were probably out at this point last year, and Pets was my first home video release, and such a big deal for me. And again, not everyone even knows Pets. Most people don't know Pets, and that's probably for the best. Like, I like it, but I have a very unique perspective and interest in some kinds of movies. I'm very into like trashy exploitative movies. Most people are not, and that is fine with me. More H.G. Lewis for me, the better. So, um, you know, getting Pets across the line felt like a slam dunk and like a miracle. So, and again, that's a UK release. It's not even here in the States, and it's not the biggest title. But 88's great, and like it's a great movie for the right audience. And it's a kind of sleazy cover too, and people kind of got mad at it even. So I was like, good, I did my job. Um, and then to be asked back to do Terror Train, and then just like for it, I I got into doing design, and I was like, the holy grail would be to design a Criterion release. That's never going to happen. But wouldn't it be nice? And then, I guess, doing a record with Mondo. That would be cool. That's also never going to happen. Maybe doing a release with Arrow, but that probably won't happen either. maybe maybe Vinegar Syndrome. I don't know. Maybe what about, and the dream list kind of reached a point, and I remember when stuff started to get ticked off that list, and I was like, huh, I did a one sheet, and it's like at a movie theater not far from here. That's weird. And then, hey, I get to work with Altered Innocence. Awesome. Hey, I get to work with 88. I've got a bunch of their Giallo releases. Cool. Hey, I get a interesting. And then the Criterion thing hit, and I was like, well, we've landed on the moon. Where next? We've landed on Mars. We've landed on Neptune at that point. It's like, okay.
Oh,
All right.
and
And then again,
yeah.
like Death Waltz and Mondo was just, it's everything has just been, gravy. Every like I it's again, it's the kind of thing of, most of these people could come to me and ask me to do, you know, a Teletubbies DVD, and I'd be like, yeah, cool, let's do it. Like, awesome. Mondo's doing a vinyl soundtrack of Transformers 7. Fine, give it to me. Like, cool.
Amazing.
I don't care.
Amazing. And
I
then yeah.
I like I the work is fun for me. It's relaxing for me. It's artistic expression about how you want to slice it. Is I mean, it's commercial art at the end of the day. Yes, it is, and yes, I'm answering to bosses, and yes, I'm answering to producers, and it like keeps a roof over my head, and there is that stress to it. But it's fun. It's never not fun. Even even on a title I don't particularly connect with and adore in the way that I do some other ones. Even on something that, like, you know, it's a short film that's going to play a couple festivals. Not everyone's going to see it in the way that, like, they would see a wide release, or they would see, a home video release that's from a boutique label. It's still fun. It's still outrageously, like, every single day that I, like, get to come downstairs and sit down to work and be like, well, I'm just making art today.
Mhm.
Cool.
That is
Insane
that is
that,
great.
like, I I get to keep food on the table, buy more stuff for my shelves, and keep my hair dyed because I'm painting some splashes in Photoshop. Huh? Who'd have thunk?
It's really that is an incredible thing, and I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again, which is you have a really keen eye, such a acute and precise eye, and that is obviously very necessary in terms of being able to capture the essence of something, anything, whether it be music, film, whatever, right? And so I think you do this very well. And I think obviously I'm not the only one who thinks that way, because right, because you're being asked. I mean, Criterion, they asked you to come back for the Elephant Man, so they're asking you back, and so this is obviously just uh, I mean, I'm so excited also to see where you're going to go next. Right? What, without giving too many things away, what are some things that you are working on or upcoming projects going forward? Again, without giving too many details away.
Yeah, there's some really fun stuff in the works that I cannot wait to share. There's some stuff that's done that we're just waiting on, announcements here and there. One, I mean, there's a couple things that are like, they won't see the light of day until America opens up again from, and maybe has a vaccine at that point, because they're waiting on movie theaters to be safe and open up again before they can even announce the art in the screenings. But I'm one that's tied to that. I'm very, 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 very excited for, because it's a movie that I deeply adore. It's a cult title that's been long unavailable in the United States. and that has not had the best of HD releases in the world. It's got a new restoration coming. They struck a new 35 millimeter print, and I'm honored to do the artwork for it because the original poster is by one of my favorite artists of all time, and it's such a beautiful and special and unique and crazy little movie that I really, 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 really hope people get to, see for the first time and see again and see in a way that will make them really kind of dig in and love this very obscure, very strange work. And I've got another soundtrack coming up soon for an Italian splatter film, which again, if you come to me and ask me to do anything by Martino or Lenzi or Argento or Bava, it's yes. It's yeah. I come to me with the Italian genre cinema, and it's a yes, no matter what budget, no matter what project you've got. I am all in. That should be coming soon, and that is going to be very, very, very fun. And then I'm also working on a home video release for a kind of rebellious punk rock cult film from the 70s, one of the classics of American independent kind of post Corman, pre full punk 80s cinema movement that it's a favorite of a lot of very, very, very well beloved people, and it's a riotous good time of a movie, and it is wild, and it is also incredibly prescient and incredibly timely, especially right now in America. And I am having a blast working on it at the moment, doing some artwork comps for it. A lot of fire. I've been painting a lot of fire lately. um, I've got a full deck. There's some wild shit in the works. Posters, Blu-rays, records, more shirts. I did shirts this year with Tees on Sen, with Rough Cut in collaboration with Haunt Love, who's also one of my favorite designers of all time. We got to do Funeral Parade of Roses and Andy Warhol's Women in Revolt, and we raised money for the Sylvia Rivera Law Project here in the States. And those came out amazing, and those are going to be coming out soon. But I've got 2 more new shirts in the work. One that should be dropping just in time for Thanksgiving in November, for a well-beloved late 90s comedy in the style of Abbott and Costello and the Marx Brothers. It's one of my favorite movies from that era. It is screwball zaniness to the max, and more people need to love this movie because it's special to me, and it is a movie like none other. And I'm really honored to be making a shirt in honor of it, with one of my favorite shirt brands, actually. Yeah, there's a lot of really, really, really good stuff coming in 2020, and even some stuff that's slated for early 2021. And I've got my fingers crossed, and I'm knocking on every piece of wood, and I'm doing all my superstitious chants and bone throwing and animal sacrifices that are necessary that this stays going, because not only am I keeping the lights on, especially right now when the world is as topsy-turvy and worrying as it is at the moment, that I'm able to do this from the comfort of my home and able to be stable and able to be sane for my relative perspective on sane. But to be doing that and to be doing something I love and to being able to do that at like the volume at which I'm able is a blessing. So I'm not only in awe of where I'm at the moment, and humbled beyond belief that I've got, this stuff dropping, behind me, but that Elephant Man's coming out and that people are going to be able to have that in hand, and that there's all this stuff ahead, both the stuff that I'm working on at the moment and the stuff that I can't see yet, but there's a future. There's no matter what's going on in the world, no matter how scary stuff is, especially in the States, there's a future. There's more, and I can't wait to be a part of it.
Wow. Wow. You said so many things there, and I'm just on the edge of my seat. What could it be? What could it be? You are such a great, you have such a great way of describing things, my friend. What a wonderful way with language. I mean that. I'm just, I have to get it now. Whatever it is, I have to get it now. So that's amazing. That's really great. I'm so honored by this. So there are so many more things I'd love to ask you, but I know that you're busy. So would it be too presumptuous of me to ask you if it's possible, if you could come back again and
Yeah.
discuss some more of your artwork and your projects when they're released, and we can ask you more questions about your approach and style to this and this. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is a blast, and like I said, before we started, I've watched a number of your videos over the year, and they're just an absolute joy to watch. The perspective that you bring, and the way you present films and the way you discuss them, just makes me happy. I see so much, especially online, especially in presentations of films and discussions of home media and discussions of art, people tend to focus on the negative in a way that doesn't appeal to me. We all see the negative. We all have two eyes. We see that. We see it enough. We need people out there pinpointing the beauty in the world and the great things about being where we are, and the great things that are coming, and the great things that we don't know about, and the great things that we haven't seen yet, and the great things that are in this world. And whenever I watch a video of you discussing a new release or discussing new announcements, I get excited. Even if I've seen that movie before, even if I have that release, I'm excited. I'm pleased as punch that you are that into something. And so I'm honored to be here. I gotta say, and this is a blast of a conversation too. So coming back,
Wow,
when do you want me?
thank you. So wow, I'm very touched, my friend. I'm very, very touched indeed. And I'm I I've learned so much today, and you've opened my eyes. You taught me that little thing about Scorsese shorts and the interior and the recipe, and then to use punk rock for Bunuel, and many others. My I'm just my mind is blown. Before we go, though, I must therefore ask you, though, could you
Mhm.
give us some of your what are some right now? What are some recommendations, film recommendations, or music recommendations, or anything, any recommendations that you would like us to check out, and really things that you're into at the moment that you think would be worth checking out if we haven't already? Could you end on a few recommendations for us? They can be film, they can
Yeah.
be art, they can be anything. What would you like to end on in terms of what you think we should check out?
Oh, I would love to. Um,
Please.
from a film point of view, this is gonna if you know me or if you follow me on social media, this is gonna seem like beating a dead horse, but I I gotta recommend that if you are out there at all, and if you're even on this channel, if you're watching this video, if you listen to me talk, no matter what, therefore you are immediately now in the perfect audience to go see Ken Russell's The Devils. The Devils, in my opinion, is one of the greatest movies ever made. possibly the greatest. You've got The Devils, The Third Man, and I don't know, the first Masashi Miyamoto movie. Like there's maybe like 4 or 5 movies that are just truly breathtakingly perfect, and The Devils is one of them. And it's hard to find, especially in America. And on top of that, it's hard to find the proper version of it. But if you can find it somewhere out in the ether, and I'm not condoning or encouraging anything, but if you can find it and if you can watch it, it is one of the greatest film experiences you will ever have, even in the truncated version. You know, if you can watch it in any way, shape, or form. Directed by Ken Russell, starring uh, um, Oliver Reed, production design by Derek Jarman. There are fewer film experiences as wild, as insightful, as beautiful, as upsetting, as challenging, as inviting as The Devils. I also have to give it up for the new release from Severin Video of the Umberto Lenzi Carol Baker box set. These are some of my favorite movies of all time. I got to see 16 millimeter prints of Quiet Place to Kill and Orgasmo at Quentin Tarantino's New Beverly Cinema a couple years ago, when they were like completely impossible to find. You now have 4K restorations on Blu-ray with soundtrack CDs. There is nothing that should be stopping you from getting these movies. If you like murder mysteries, if you like Hitchcock, if you like Italian giallo cinema, if you like noir films, if you like melodrama, if you like Carol Baker, you need these movies. You need these in your life. They are so much fun. They are so endlessly gorgeous and inventive, and the special features on them are a delight. I also am currently loving some of the new releases from Scream Factory at the moment. Roman Polanski's The Tenant is one of my favorite films of all time. Obviously, Polanski isn't for everyone, and that's fair. However, in my opinion, The Tenant is his greatest work. It is Kafka by way of Bunuel and Hitchcock in a way that will disturb, frighten, engross, and mystify you for the rest of your life. There are images and ideas in this movie that the movie doesn't resolve, that the movie doesn't even come close to giving you answers for, that you will not stop thinking about. And it is so beautifully done, and is a mystery and an investigation in a world that you just want to live in, or do everything that you can to not live in. And additionally, I also have to continually beat the dead horse of Hammer Films' Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Obviously, I would not be Sister Hyde design without this movie. When it comes to trans representation in horror, it is, for lack of a better word, bad. There are tropes, there are really, really heinous depictions of mental illness and murderers and all of these things related to gender and related to violence that we love to see in horror movies like Silence of the Lambs, Dressed to Kill, and Psycho, and Sleepaway Camp. And I love those movies, but they're hard to watch. Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde presents the Dr. Jekyll narrative at the same time as a Jack the Ripper narrative, and it does so through a very interestingly gendered lens that presents gender euphoria instead of gender dysphoria, and it is one of the most liberating experiences and one of the most fun Hammer movies out there. Hammer, of course, is iconic, and they made so many classic movies. This one is outrageously underrated. There's a lovely new release from Scream Factory here in the States. Studio Canal has put out a gorgeous edition in Europe that I also cannot recommend highly enough. And I think everyone needs it. And the Indicator just announced Road Games. So if you haven't pre-ordered that, go pre-order Road Games. It's gonna sell out. And you need the full box set because it's got the poster fold out of that original gorgeous artwork. And if you have not seen Road Games, your life is not complete. Road Games is also a perfect film. It is Hitchcock Down Under. It is Rear Window with semi-trucks. And also Jamie Lee Curtis is there.
Yes.
Need I say more?
Yes.
I feel like that's it. In terms of music, I just have to say, if you have not listened to Brody Dale's solo album from a couple years ago, Diploid Love, go listen to Brody Dale's album. That's what I've been listening to that, and I've been listening to the first couple of Rancid albums on repeat for the past couple weeks as I've been working, and a little bit of MIA. That is what plays in my household when my roommate isn't playing Gershwin and jazz and Barbra Streisand and Elton John. I am playing the Winona Ryders and Brody Dale and Rancid and all of that, and doing my best not to drive him over the edge.
My goodness, I'm so impressed so many times in this conversation, but it's true. My goodness, this has been incredible, absolutely incredible, and thank you so much for that great mention. I'm Richard Franklin, Road Games. My goodness, it would be. I really need to talk about Richard Franklin films more. And
the moment that I saw that announcement of that, I immediately pre-ordered that set. Yeah. I also know they're working on. I've seen people mention that they're working on the Frank Langella Dracula, and the moment that becomes available, I'm pre-ordering it. I love that movie with all of them. I've got an original press book for that around here somewhere. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Restore the vampire movies. Give us deluxe box sets. I want everything. Give me everything.
My dear friend, Drusilla, my dear friend, you are one with such immaculate taste. I am, and I want to say that I think, yes, we have, in terms of I want to say that we have a lot in common in terms of our cinematic taste. You mentioned so many films that I love, but I could never express it in a beautifully sincere and kinetic way that you just did. And you just did it off the cuff. My goodness, you should have your own channel. You should talk about films. No, seriously.
I'm also rattled on Mountain Dew at the moment, so that's part of it.
Well, maybe the
peach juice is gone. This is all Mountain Dew at this point.
I'm gonna have to give that.
This is me staying sober in quarantine and getting whatever buzz I can off of sugar.
Well, whatever it is, my friend, it really has been such. I mean, it's been part of this beautiful conversation that I've had the great pleasure and honor of being a part of, and to listen to you and to learn from you. And it's been a real treat. And
thank you so much.
I want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. Truly, this opportunity. I'm looking at I'm just still in awe of your description. I'm looking at myself in the Zoom monitor now, and I'm noticing that the way I'm tilting my head, it's sort of like Vanessa Redgrave in The Devils. So I'll just, I'm wearing white too. So I'm just, you have this. I'm thinking about The Devils now in this way. I have to, right. So I fully support everything, every film endorsement that you've made, but you said it so brilliantly that everything that you said, it's just ringing in my ears now, and just, I can't stop thinking about it. So I'm going to have to start doing some exploration, and also the peach juice Mountain Dew recipe. I'm going to have to do that. Maybe that can be something that can be put on an interior design of one of your future Blu-ray releases. I don't know.
Sneak in all my awful drink cocktails.
Well, right, but it could be something, right? It could be something that your fans and admirers will will be loyal to. So I will certainly give it a try because it sounds. I mean, I like peach juice. I like Mountain Dew. What can I say? So what I mean, right? So, but
It's about
anyway,
got in the fridge. It gets it done. I'm
my
not.
dear.
I wish I had the commitment to be Toby Hooper and drink only Dr. Pepper. Tried it. It's great. I could almost do it, but I need something else sometimes.
Oh my goodness, you've mentioned so many. Ah, man, we should just talk about this. Oh my goodness, this is great. This is great. Anyway, my dear friend, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for this.
Thank
I'm
you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's my honor, truly.
oh, I'm just I'm so thrilled, and please let's do this again very soon. I can't wait to hear more from you. And just
Surely.
anything you want to talk about, I am so game. If you're game, I'm game.
I'm in.
Ah, fantastic. We'll talk later about that. But anyway, my dear friend Drusilla, thank you so much. And is it okay if we put information in the description box of this video about Sister Hyde, the website, and any other related information will be in the description box. Is there any other place that people can find you?
I'm all over Twitter and Instagram. The ats are the same for those. It's Hyde Sister, so it's Sister Hyde inverted, and that's HYDE, like Jekyll and. So I'm on both. Come find me. I'm tweeting these days more often, but I will. My Instagram is mostly my artwork, so if you want to see maybe new pieces that are coming out soon, so new stuff you'll be dropping next week. I'll be dropping some stuff related to Elephant Man when that comes out. I occasionally post unused comps or little things I'm working on over there, so that's a really great, if you want to look more into the art, into the process, the Instagram account's the one. If you want to hear me rattle on about whatever dumb movie I'm watching today, that's the Twitter account.
And maybe we can put some of that info in the description box below.
Absolutely.
So okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, my friend. Drusilla, thank you so much again for your time, and warmest regards, and we'll talk again very soon, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can't wait.
Me too. I can't wait, dude. Thank you very much, my friend.